So, A Working Man stars Jason Statham, and it's directed by David Ayer. And of course, when I saw the trailer, I'm sure like a lot of people had the same question. Like, wait a minute, is this a sequel to The Beekeeper? The film from last year with Jason Statham that was also directed by David Ayer, in which a working class guy just tries to like stand up to like some bad guys and gun them down. And part of me wants to believe that it was. I mean, as I looked into this film, I realized, oh, I didn't know this. It's based on a novel by Chuck Dixon. And not to mention, like, it was written by Sylvester Stallone, not directed by him, just co-written with David Ayer. But part of me wants to believe that this was just that Ayer just made up this film on the fly right after finishing The Beekeeper. Like, he got done with making The Beekeeper, and it's like, I gotta come up with like a new film for Jason Statham really quick, and just like, you know, worked up like A Working Man like over a weekend, just like scribbled it down and just like bam, we're done. We got another Jason Statham film. It's basically The Beekeeper, but I scribbled out stuff here and there. And I also like told Jason Statham, no, it's not The Beekeeper 2. It's you're a man who works. He's a working man. And honestly, I kind of wish that it were a sequel to The Beekeeper, because I really dug The Beekeeper. Like, it's dumb, but it knows where to have fun, and it knows where to like lean into the exaggeration and the grit of the scenario. Because A Working Man feels it comes so close to being like a great so bad it's funny comedy. Just because like I feel like it's so brazen with like the type of film it's trying to be here, because of course, you know, even if you've never seen the trailers, you know, like, you know, Jason Statham, you know, even though he puts up this facade of just being a construction worker, he's really got a history of violence. Like, you know that just from looking at him. You know, his character here called Levon Cade, you know, he's established as a construction worker, and then of course, you know, when some gangsters come by and they threaten like one of his workers, he comes up there and he says like, hey, leave him alone, and they say like, hey, mind your own business, and then the camera zooms in on Statham as like the angry music swells, and it's just like, I wish the film were that ridiculous, of just like leaning into like the tropes that we expect of this type of film. But it like I said, there are those little fun moments, because like once that happens, of course, Statham uses his action skills to kind of use stuff around the construction site to beat up these gangsters. And it's like, that's silly, like, and I want more of that. But unfortunately, the film, I think, falls back a little bit too much on like the familiar stuff we expect Statham to do in this type of role, because the whole idea behind this film is that he needs to rescue his boss's daughter, who's been taken in by the Russian mafia. And he basically, you know, just all he wants to do is just get back this girl, and, you know, he's basically makes it his life mission. But he also has some lingering elements of PTSD, and he's trying to fight for custody of his daughter, and none of that's working out. So he figures that if he can just rescue this one girl, that everything else in his life is just gonna get better, or at least, you know, be better for him if he can rescue this girl. Now, of course, Statham goes through like all the familiar motions here. You know, he hunts down these mafia guys. You know, he makes like some sly one-liners here and there, and he beats up a lot of people, and some very odd people. Like, there are some genuinely funny moments, I think, with like the type of characters he encounters here, especially with all the Russians being so easy for Statham to just like torture and outwit and outgun all the time, that it's kind of funny just to watch him kind of like mow down through these characters without much effort. But I love how at one point in the film, he has to confront another gang at this biker bar, and their leader sits on this giant throne of like it looks like the Game of Thrones deal with like the swords, except instead of swords, it's motorcycle parts. And it made me realize, like, either this is like a rejected Game of Thrones throne, or this is a leftover from Stallone's The Expendables, like it's like promotional material, which it would not surprise me if it was, since Stallone co-wrote this film. So there isn't much more to the plot than that. It's just Statham going on a killing spree of all these different like Russian mafia members, with some moments that are kind of funny and some moments that are kind of gritty, but it never... I hate this film for never leaning that far into either being like a serious type of like revenge thriller, or just being a goofy B-movie revenge thriller, because it feels like it's trying to be both and ends up being nothing, especially with like a lot of like the wasted potential here. Like, you have David Harbour in this film who plays Levon's like best friend from like his old Marine days, and he mostly just hangs out in a cabin wearing his little wraparound shades with his giant beard and offering up guns when need be. And I'm pretty sure Harbour spends most of this film just in his scenes just sitting down. He doesn't really do anything. Like, if you were hoping for Harbour to fire some guns in this film, you're not going to get it. I think I should warn anyone going into the film expecting that. But just like such a wasted potential with just like how ridiculous like you can make like some of the like these villains here. Like, they're incompetent, sure, and they have like their funny moments, but they always kind of like dip in and out of the film. It's just like, okay, this line delivery will be a little bit silly, but this one won't. Like, it's trying to be, it feels like the film's trying to be like both silly and serious at the same time, and it ends up just kind of not really finding a flow for anything. So at one point in the film, it just gives up. Like, you're just watching Jason Statham action scenes without any like emotional build here, and with like some weird attempts at jokes here and there that kind of work, but kind of don't. Like, they're on the cusp of just being absurd and ridiculous enough. And I think that's what made me hate the film more. It's like, if you're going to do this absurd type of film, you need to lean into it harder. You need to make more ridiculous stuff. You need to play up how silly it is. And there, like I said, there are a few moments that do come closer. I mean, like, there's a little bit more of that magic within Ayer's directing that kind of carried over from The Beekeeper. But it feels like wasted potential all over the place here. Like, consider this. This is a film in which one woman who's being held captive by these Russian mafia goons, she's presented to this man, and she immediately bites on his face and tears off the skin, and like, he has to get like stitches, and he's bleeding from the face. Like, that sounds really cool, doesn't it? Here's the thing. The film has this, but you don't get to see her bite down on the flesh. You don't get to see you would think if a film had a scene like that, where a woman bites off someone's face, you would want to see that, especially in a gritty, silly film like this one. But you don't get that in A Working Man. That's how much of a cheat A Working Man is. If you're just going into this film expecting some very cool violence for like this revenge fantasy type of film, you don't get as much of that as you should here. You get a little bit of it here and there based on how Statham kills his targets and how he's like just laser focused on just getting this girl out of there. You do get the violence, but not enough. There isn't that same, weird energy that was in The Beekeeper. And it's just, like I said, it pales in comparison. And it's hard not to compare the two because, like, they came out just like a year apart, and it's the same actor and the same director, co-writer here. And it's just, it's never working as much as it should. And like, I know that they probably went into production with this as they were finishing up with Beekeeper, but it's just, there has to be something more to it than that. Like, if you're going to be silly, be silly. Lean hard into that camp. You just can't half-ass it in a film like this, especially, if you want it to be more enduring and not just like bleed into all the other Jason Statham action films. Like, this will probably get lost alongside, something like The Mechanic or any of like his other type of films, because it's just, it's so close. It is so close. It's maddening to being so bad that it's funny. It has its moments like okay, this is ridiculous. I smirked a little here and there, but not enough, I think, to enjoy this film. And honestly, after I was done watching this movie, I went back and watched The Beekeeper just to remind myself of how much, campy fun that David Ayer could have with using Jason Statham. Because David Ayer did it fine last year with The Beekeeper, but with A Working Man, he just doesn't deliver on this film that is never quite serious or silly enough to be that entertaining.